Welcome to SchezzWho, folks. This is episode 12. And, with any healthy and growing YouTube show, it requires your views and your likes and your comments and, of course, your subscription. So before anything else happens, like this video and subscribe to the SchezzWho channel. Don't mind me during the show as I try to maneuver around a couple cats that are moving around the room here. Don't worry about that. So I'm just going to want to have a great show here. And I don't want to forget all that makes this show possible, of course, leading off with my wife, Andrea Dixon Schesventer. She's the sun to the solar system, if you will. And while I like political commentary and running for Congress in Virginia's 2nd District like I'm doing, she's the hub, encouraging me on. And of course, Seiko Varner is also the one responsible for me getting into YouTube at all. He's the man over at Positive Vibes Incorporated, and you can catch him on YouTube at our Black Empowerment channel. He's a DJ and a financial consultant ready to help you out. Just reach out to 757-932-0177. Cambergort, one of my favorite eateries, Ellen's Home Style and Barbecue. There are 2 locations, one across from Regent University in Virginia Beach and one on Portsmouth Boulevard here in Portsmouth now. Think back to my very first SchezzWho episode, I think some 7 months ago. I began interviewing with the U.S. presidential candidate, and wouldn't you know it, that gentleman was on the recent third-party and independent candidate debate stage about a month ago, and joining him on that stage was my guest for today, Jasmine Sherman. So what I'm going to do is bring her on right now. That is great. Right out of the gate, I want to thank you, Jasmine, for joining SchezzWho today and reaching out to voters here across the eastern section of Virginia. So let's begin with a little bit of history on Jasmine the person, where you're from, and what have you done and had the interest in outside of politics?
So thank you so much for having me. I am Jasmine Sherman, like you said. I have been outside of politics. The biggest thing that I do in my community is mutual aid. Years ago, before I was running for office, I was riding public transportation and I saw a gentleman. It was in the middle of winter and he was eating ice cream. And I was like, something's wrong here. And so I got off of the bus early and I went up to him and I asked him what was going on. And that's how I started my hobby, which is the mutual aid known as Greater Charlotte Rise. And we provide services, emergency services, including rental assistance, utility assistance, and food assistance as well. We do a lot of on-the-spot assistance in the mutual aid. And that has pretty much been my entire life up until 3 years ago when I started running for office.
Now, looking you up a little bit for history, I also think you're pretty good into finance, too. You want to touch on your financial history?
I forgot about that. So I have my master's degree in finance. I was fortunately a foster child, and so I graduated high school and I put myself through college online with the University of Phoenix, and I even got a master's degree in finance where I spent my adult career when I wasn't doing mutual aid. I spent my adult career working for some of the largest banks in the country in the IT portion of that. So some of you guys have seen my work, Erica, on the Bank of America app. That's something that I had a hand in making. And then there's some other things that go on behind the scenes at your local financial institution. So I did do pretty well in that as well. I forgot about like my real career. But luckily I was able to retire at 38. So it's pretty cool.
Oh, I kind of aspire for that. I'm 37, and I would definitely like to retire right now. You mentioned Charlotte. Is that where you're at now? Well, not literally at now, if you could be an event, but I'm where you live.
Yes, I do live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I am a New Yorker, born and raised, but I did graduate. I'm fortunate. I'm one of the few people who have had the opportunity to live on the East Coast, the West Coast. I've lived in Texas. I've lived in South Korea. I've lived in New York, Massachusetts, North Carolina. I've had the opportunity of really exploring my country, and I'm very fortunate for that.
I've been able to visit Charlotte twice, Mecklenburg County. Both times trying to use the Rusty Wallace driving experience to drive at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and it rained on both of those days. So unfortunately, I have not been able to do that, but I will admit that I quite love Charlotte both times that I've been there. It's a great place. Maybe one day I'll visit New York City. Get to see a little bit about that. I've heard from my former co-host, Seiko Varner, that Brooklyn is a blood type. So
So
Maybe one
Brooklyn.
day I get to see that.
So I don't mean to offend your host, but I'm a New Yorker from Queens, and for some reason there are a bunch of like rivalries between the boroughs, and so Brooklyn is okay if you are a person that likes Brooklyn,
Mhm.
but Queens is the best. I'm always going to say Queens is the best.
Of course, I'm naturally reminded to coming to America when it comes to Queens. And
And I love that scene. Good morning.
speaking of
Good morning.
my queen to be is over there in another room. So shout out to her. But also, I think because I like to give questions in advance to the best of my ability so we can read up. And I think you've read over some. Save the Marvel one and the Brooklyn Queens dynamic for that spot from the Civil War. I think you know what I'm talking about.
I do, yes.
And then maybe we'll see just how much of a rivalry there is between the boroughs. But we were talking about yourself as a person before we go into the politics side. I also want to give you a chance to tell us a bit more about Miss Bluebear and just what makes her her.
So Tanda, one of the things that, and this is going to sound really crazy, when I first started looking into Tanda and her work, the reason that we clicked so much is Tanda works with the houseless community, and I was talking about my mutual aid, which works with the houseless community, and so we both have that in common and our love for our people. One of the things that I remember about Tanda, because people don't realize when you do a lot of activism or protesting, sometimes it's violent, sometimes it's a sticky situation, and I remember telling people I was like, I like this lady. She looks like she could take a punch. So, Tanda is a fierce advocate for Indigenous individuals, and it's been an amazing experience working with her, working with Indigenous peoples on the land back policy, which I know we're probably going to get into later. But she's just a force. She doesn't play, I'm really enamored by like all the work and the strength that she consistently exhibits. She's really dope.
Excellent. It's great to have a great kinship with just shared beliefs with your running mate, and it really strengthens the ticket. And on that note of politics, you've been interested in community helping for a while. You just mentioned that, and you have ambitions now for office. And I read that you've been a Green Party member since 2016 and an outright socialist. So, specifically, what does socialism mean to you, and what does the Green Party mean to you?
So one of the things that I try to explain to people all the time about myself or my politics is your political party is not your identity. It's not your badge of honor, right? The political party is just a vehicle where like-minded individuals who have values that align on political issues work to get the candidate that they want to be their voice publicly. So I am a Green Party member, but I'm also a socialist. But I'm a socialist in the vein of Pan-African socialism, and that is something that I got from like childhood about how indigenous communities structured themselves within the continent of Africa to make sure to promote social change, to promote health, and making sure everyone had their basic needs met. My values as a socialist have nothing to do, and I want to be clear about this, with my political party. I'm with 5 political parties right now, and we're currently trying to get another political party as well, because the party is just a vehicle to help a candidate get elected. And my goal is to be on all 50 states ballots. And so loyalty to one political party won't help me achieve that. I do think that our country would be better served if people were less focused on the political parties and more focused on servicing other Americans. I do feel like that's the thing that we all need to drive home. Once the political party or the candidate of that political party doesn't serve you, you should be interviewing immediately and finding a new political party that aligns with your values. We all know that the Democrats of today are not the Democrats of yesteryear. We know that the Republicans of today are not the Republicans of yesteryear. Those things consistently evolve as humans evolve. And so our understanding about human nature and our political parties, I think that also needs to evolve.
I'm glad we you touched on the concept of it evolving. I'll bring myself into this as a comparison sake. I began studying politics as a talk radio listener back around 99 and 2000. But unfortunately, that meant, especially in this area, being subject to a lot of Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity type conservatives. So by the time I was able to first vote in high school in 2004, that was for George Bush. And thankfully, my mind has shifted in the 20 years since to where I am currently. which is being completely scornful of the Republican Party and distrusting and scoffing at the Democrat Party. So there's policies I like that none of those parties would really give a shit about. And I'm greatly intrigued by your platform. And let's begin with your transgender protection and rights policies. What are they?
So I want to be clear. I originally didn't have a transgender policy. What happened is I identify as a trans person, which means that the gender I was assigned at birth, I don't really align with as an adult today. Um, but the trans community really wanted to make sure that their protection, right? And so none of the policies that I have is for one specific group, but with the trans policy, it highlights within my platform what things would protect and serve them. And I don't see how it's any different when I thought about it from a business person wanting to see my tax policy and how that would impact their business and the day that they could conduct their lives. What my transgender policy does is it lets people know that I will cover their health care and the procedures they need in America, which covers is under everybody's universal health care, which I offer. It also means that there will be, should someone do something to a trans person, like violently, because we know the average age of a trans person, life expectancy is 36. There are harsher punishments associated with that, which can be followed in my abolish police policy. Everything that I have for the trans community is already laid out for everybody else. It's just in this policy, it explains it specifically in a language that is geared towards trans people. But the same protections that I would be providing for gay people and trans people are the same policies I would provide for straight people, or heterosexual people, or heteronormative people. It's just that this policy puts it all together in a package that those individuals care about.
All right. I also want to move into how you think about reforming the ADA. You do touch on that on your site.
Yes, so 80, like not enough of our country. One of the things that we don't all understand is that disability is one of those unexpected things. No one can plan for it. And it impacts all our communities. I mean, like if you're someone that's like, I don't like identity politics, this is the one issue that touches on everyone. Every single spot in the United States should be something that could accommodate a person who has a disability, a visible disability, because people don't care about invisible disability. So I'm not going to take y'all down that path. But we know that we live in a country where there are not sidewalks on both sides of the street. We live in places in this country where there's not a path that is large enough for a wheelchair. I know tons of people in the South that have seen people driving their wheelchairs on the road because there's nowhere to accommodate them on the sidewalk. I believe in mixed walkable neighborhoods. I think things should be within your community because of how we've allowed cars to form the way we live in America. We don't have where your grocery store, your eye doctor, your regular doctor, we don't have those things in proximity to where we live now. We don't even work in communities where we live. We all drive 30 minutes or 20 miles to go to someplace else. And so, what my platform does is it starts to put things right back where people, the average person, could walk to. And it also does that by making sure everything is ADA compliant. So, people who have disabilities have access to move around. This does include heating and cooling roads so people are not slipping on ice. So our four-legged friends are not burning themselves. If you have a cat or a dog or someone that takes an animal for a walk, you have to worry about in the summertime them burning their feet. That is a reality, and we have to be compassionate. And so my platform in making everything ADA compliant makes it work for the largest demographic that is underserved and underrepresented, which is the disabled community.
My next question, I want to roll back into something relevant to Ms. Bluebear, your land back policies. Tell us a little about the land back policies.
So the land back policy is acknowledging that America was founded on genocide. America was founded on like the ultimate robbery, right? People came over to America who didn't live here. They killed, they pillaged, they raped, they took land that was not belonging to them. If I stole your car today, and someone else, like your neighbor, let's say I stole your car and somehow your wife purchased it from me by accident, didn't know, she would be forced to give that car back because she purchased a stolen good. For everyone whose Mima and Pawpaw worked really hard to purchase the house that they got with that GI Bill, it was stolen property. And so, what my platform does is it refunds the money that the house is worth to the individual who owns the home, and those people are allowed to remain within that home. What would then happen is the stewardship of the land returns to the indigenous tribes that we know are the owners of that land. So no one's coming to put you out. No one is coming to take your property, but we're paying you for that property, eliminating property taxes. And when you need modification, so let's say you're someone, not you, but you're someone who has a home that is not in the best shape, we would be repairing and upgrading your home. While we repair and upgrade your home, we would be doing that within the guidelines of indigenous stewardship. So what that means is instead of planting grass, you might get clover because it's better for your local environment. Instead of you getting a sidewalk that is heated and cooled with one material. Your sidewalk, based on their culture or their rules, might be heated and cooled with water. Those are the little nuances that go into it. If you want to plant a tree that's an invasive species, that might not be allowed. But if you are someone that wants to take care of certain things, those things would be like certain things, like in terms of like planting new vegetation, as long as it's within the region of where you live and it's natural to it, that would be how they would help you.
And not only would you like to help out with community-based housing reformation like that, I think you also want to help de-commodify public utilities that it would be very big for a homeowner. Talk a little
Yes.
bit about that.
So one of the biggest things is with my ADA compliance, I remove our reliance on fossil fuels. I believe that we do have a climate issue in our country. And more importantly, outside of what I believe, the data supports that we have a climate issue. I mean, flowers are blooming in Alaska. In North Carolina, tomato plants continue to bloom throughout the entire winter. Our heat map, we know, has increased. One of the things that I want to do is make America an equal nation, an equitable nation. So, an example of that would be like in places like Nebraska, they already have utilities that they don't pay because the city and the state take care of those, or they're at a reduced rate. So, what I want to apply for all Americans is not having to pay for utilities. Part of the reason what I was explaining is some of the homes would be upgraded. You'd be upgraded with either a generator or a wind turbine, depending on where you live, to produce renewable energy. So you're no longer going to pay the electric company. That's going to put money back in your wallet. We know that a lot of Americans are living in places with unclean water. It is not fair to make you pay for water that is not clean. People in Flint, Michigan still pay water bills, and they have not been able to drink their water for years. Um, and so we want to start doing things that work for Americans. There are already states that subsidize utilities. I just think it should apply to all Americans, similar to how there are already states in America that give people universal basic income. I think that should apply for all Americans. And so when I say I'm going for equality, that's what I mean. You shouldn't pay utilities in a country where everyone's not paying them.
Sounds great to my ears so far. The Green Party, of course, they also have a very strong environmental approach. I have moved past just wishing carbon dioxide emissions are to be reduced by regulation. I kind of support now geoengineering to combat climate change. And so, what are your thoughts in a Sherman administration regarding greater climate change?
So one of my thoughts is I'm going to listen to the activists that already are telling us how we need to handle climate change. So one of the things that my platform does that goes against the Green Party, and I know this and I hear this all the time, is my platform does promote safe nuclear energy on top of renewable energy. What this does is puts people back to work. It also promotes healthy, clean energy production. Um, what we have to start doing is listening to scientists and not crooked politicians that helped defund the things that caused Chernobyl. And what that means is safety regulations. We deregulated everything that didn't make sense for us. We deregulated so many things for the pursuit of profits. And I think it's time that we go ahead and put people over profits. There are ways that we can provide people with better, safer energy. We just choose not to do it correctly or fully fund it.
All right. So in 2020, back when I was running for Virginia Beach City Council, I was participating in a Tea Party forum. The whole panel was asked if they supported, which at the time was new, the defund the police movement. Of easily 15 citywide candidates there or online, At the time, 14 said no, they didn't. And I was the only one who turned the panel around and said, yes, your stated policy is greatly intriguing to me, and that's abolishment of the police. So please tell me more about that.
So I believe in paying Americans to do American jobs. Right now, I don't care what city you live in, the nosy neighbor downstairs knows more about what's going on in your house than anybody else in your community. Sometimes your nosy neighbor knows more about what's going on in your house than you do, and your children haven't told you. What we are doing is paying average citizens to police their own neighborhoods. For people who are like, what does this mean for my law enforcement buddy cop? It means that he can still be a cop, he or she, but in their zip code. What we are doing is returning people to policing the neighborhoods with which they have value in. An example I would give you is Vivaldi. During the Vivaldi massacre, those children were not rescued by law enforcement. They were rescued by their parents who were willing to put life and limb on the line to save their children. Police, we know now, based on what the Supreme Court decision says, police only have to protect property. Property is not people. We want people who are willing to protect people to be involved in the policing. So what we do is we go ahead and let those police stations convert to something else that would serve the public, and let the individuals who claim that they want to serve and protect join their local community task force, which they would be compensated handsomely for. But it also would mean that your neighbor, Mrs. Watson downstairs, is a member of this platform, right? This keeps the children in your community safe because you value those children. They're the neighbors that your kids play with. They're the kids that you've seen grow up. Not taking police on such a global scale like we have and militarize it, but what we're doing is taking it and making it back about the community where people live and where they are. So for the cop that is serving in my neighborhood, he would just serve in his neighborhood.
Now, you touched a little bit on child protection and that. And I notice on your site you have several different subdivisions of how you would like to apply a new policy for children in many different ways. Can you bring that all together and touch on that?
Yeah, so and I'm gonna tell you guys I'm biased, right? Part of the reason that I'm so passionate about protecting children is I was a child that wasn't protected. What that means is, just to be straightforward, is I, like many children, ended up in foster care. Our foster care system does not protect children from predators. It often pays those predators to hurt those children. So one of the things that my policy does is it gives children rights. So when people, mom and dad, divorce, it doesn't work out, people are actually going to be forced to listen to what the child wants and what they feel. They would have their own social worker. They would have their own advocate. Talk about what little Timmy and Tommy or Judy and Jeannie want and feel. One of the other things that will help children is that we are giving children therapy and autonomy. And what autonomy means, it doesn't mean that I'm going to stop little Joey from having to eat broccoli. But what I am going to do is make sure that if there is a bully at Joey's school, that bully is held accountable. Since children don't have rights, teachers often dismiss the issues that are brought to their attention. So my platform provides children with rights. It also stops children because we have a tradition in this country of marrying small children off to grown adults. So my platform also says that if a child is not old enough to vote, a child is not old enough to get married. And that eliminates some of the predatory behavior that we've seen. I'm the first candidate to outright make child brides illegal. We also, by making sure that children have rights, we eliminate the trading of children. Right now, there are Facebook groups where if you gave birth to a child, you and your wife could sign that child over at lunch to a stranger on a napkin. And that's not safe for children.
Well, this is a very heartwarming type of policies that I would also like to see introduced on a national scale. And I think you also would like to decriminalize sex work. And I see no problem with that. If you want to touch a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I believe in freedom, right? Like, this is supposed to be the land of the free, the land of opportunity. Sex work is one of the oldest professions in the world. And I trust that an individual who wants to be a sex worker is doing so because they want to be a sex worker. Now, and I want you guys to understand, I separate sex workers from human traffickers. Sex working should be decriminalized for any adult that willingly wants to engage in intercourse or some type of other adult activity for funds consensually. That should be something you can buy, get, have, experience, put back on the shelf, and walk away from safely. All parties, including testing for STIs and to make sure there's no robberies. A lot of Johns get robbed and a lot of ladies get hurt. We have to put that aside. By decriminalizing it, we give people recourse over their bodies. It eliminates the whole pimp profit motive, and it also eliminates Johns from being able to just hurt women. Another thing that I believe in, again, when it comes to freedom, is bodily autonomy. It's your parts to do what you choose to do with. If we can stimulate the economy while you have a good time at work, I got no problem with that. So I decriminalize not just sex work, but I also decriminalize drugs. We spend too much of American tax dollars trying to limit the freedoms that we tell them that they should have anyway, especially when those crimes don't hurt people. Now, I'm not getting into the morality of does having intercourse outside of marriage hurt or help people. That's not my job. If you are someone that doesn't believe in sex work or drugs, don't do them. Don't engage in them. But I'm not going to stop someone else from living their life, and I don't think we should.
Seconded on that opinion. Now, you are going to propose a lot of things that would require some federal spending, but we haven't yet touched on your way you would like to see taxes. Could you visualize for us what your perfect tax policy would be?
My perfect tax policy is $0 coming out of your pocket. That's my perfect tax policy. I think taxation is theft. However, I live in a thieving economy and I have to make sure we produce for this thieving nation. So we still have to pay taxes. One of the things that my tax plan does is it switches the burden from the consumers to the corporations. A lot of businesses get corporate welfare, and my tax policy puts that to stop. And for people who don't understand what I mean by corporate welfare, every tax season we have been writing Amazon checks. Every tax season we've been writing Walmart checks, GE checks. They have not been paying taxes. We have been paying those corporations to exist, and that doesn't make sense to me. In a Sherman administration, I would pay the individual, the consumer, and the corporations would be forced to earn your business, and their business models would need to work. So if a car company failed, we would no longer bail out that car company. If a bank fails, we are no longer performing socialism on banks. We'll be funding the American public, but not the American corporation. These corporations have seen record profits, and we have data to show right after the pandemic, especially that they price gouged and abused us. Because we have that data, we are going back 37 years to get that misappropriated money from people that owe us those monies. I think it's important that America be made whole.
It's a great way to put it, America to be made whole. And also think back to my libertarian days, and there's quite a few things you mentioned that sounded very similar to the bona fides they had, like taxation is theft
But
and
it
stuff like that.
is.
I
Like,
mean,
let's
I
talk
don't
about it.
disagree.
When
Yeah.
when this country was colonized, indigenous people weren't paying taxes. When
hmm
when John Smith and them came over here pillaging and raping and burning shit down, they didn't pay taxes. That was some stuff that they brought over from England that they should have left in England. This country would be a better nation if we didn't have taxes. But now that it's here, I got to make the best of it. But I know when I'm getting robbed.
hmm It's a great way to put it. But on other monetary policies, I would, of course, like to introduce a few if I was in charge. For instance, a universal basic income and reparations. I used to be afraid of both as a conservative and a libertarian, but with an adoption of modern monetary theory, I'm just no longer afraid of good domestic spending. So there's more to reparations than just 1619 through 1865. There's
But what if we
Reconstruction.
made but what if we made reparations work for us? We know people like cannabis. So what if I put Alabama, the state of Alabama that has a kudzu problem because
Mhm.
they brought an invasive species to their state? What if I grew cannabis in Alabama and I put hemp to work for Americans? So now we have more money, and every time someone uses their universal health care in the Sherman administration to smoke cannabis, which we know people are already doing that, it makes too much money for us to deny it. Might as well cover it under your universal health care. Let the people who smoke, smoke. Let the people who eat it. And we benefit from the profits. We don't just benefit from the profits. We put Alabamans back to work. We start to create a better green product for our nation. We can put money in our hands when we do things differently, in my opinion.
I would agree. I think we might also share some similar opinions on how we might change Social Security a little bit in order
I,
to adopt into a basic income and reparations.
I cut Social Security. So I don't believe in Social Security yet. I don't like young people getting robbed. And Social Security is a major robbery of young people. What I do is I give people, instead of Social Security, I give them universal basic income, which we have a plan to pay for people who are like, where does that money come from? It comes from the corporations that have been taking our tax money for over the last 37 years. We can pay universal basic income, but we definitely need to cut Social Security and stop taking that money out of younger people's paychecks. There are other ways, because Social Security won't be at the rate we have. It won't be here when I need it at 60 something, and I'm 38 now. We have to start putting us first and doing things that work. I get that they did what they could for our grandparents and our great grandparents, but you wouldn't, the same way you don't use leeches in a medical procedure now is the same way we don't need to keep using Social Security in a financial issue now.
It's outdated, yeah.
It is. And so I cut Social Security. Don't vote for me if you're somebody that's clinging to it. Now, if you are disabled, you would get your Social Security disability insurance still on top of your universal basic income. But yeah, it's time to do things that work for the younger generation.
Now, on my own political journey, which is currently including a run for Virginia's 2nd congressional district, I'm adopting an immigration stance from my old libertarian days. And people should be freely able to travel and settle as long as they're peaceful. So on the topic of immigration, may you run for me the gist of the book, Not a Nation of Immigrants, and how you would like to handle immigration.
Yeah, so I'm listening to, I've listened to Roxy Ortiz's Gray for a while now. Not a Nation of Immigrants is an actual thing. I'm also listening today literally to an Indigenous People's History by the same author. And she talks about how like immigration isn't a thing. Like Black people did not immigrate to the United States. We were chattel slavery people. So what happens is a couple people from Africa were brought over here to be enslaved, but then a couple of other people were brought over here to be baby factories. Like people don't talk about how like we literally had Black people not coming from Africa, but being birthed in like breeding farms right here in the States. So Black people are not immigrants. When we talk about Indigenous people, the people who were here when John Smith came over and ruined this great nation and gave us taxes, those people were not immigrants. There is a population of people who have come after, John Smith and the Pilgrims. They're immigrants, but the bulk of us are not immigrants. Immigration is something that happens by choice, and many of us didn't choose to participate in this social contract, which is why I think Jefferson had the right idea. Every 20 years, the Constitution needs to be renegotiated, and we are well overdue for a renegotiation.
I like that idea too, and keep that in mind when I reference TJ a little bit later.
Okay.
Thinking again to my libertarian days, drug laws are something I want to completely radicalize in the United States. And I'm fond of some of Portugal's attempts and Norway's attempts at expanding government efforts at harm reduction and helping addicted people. So what are your drug law ideas?
Yeah, so I say we decriminalize every drug, right? Decriminalize every drug. What this allows us to do is actually produce clean drugs. And by clean drugs, I mean if you are someone that is in the business of manufacturing pharmaceuticals, you'll have to have a license for that. It'll make sure that people are not getting shit that is laced with fentanyl. It will make sure that the people who are using products are using products that will not hurt them, just get them high. I do believe that decriminalization will allow people who have an addiction to get off of said products. I also feel like it is important based on my life experiences that we have safe use centers everywhere around the country. And for anybody who's like, well, I don't want a safe use center in my neighborhood for drugs, you already have one in your neighborhood for alcohol. That's what a bar is. A bar is a place where you can go and engage in alcohol consumption safely under the guise of someone watching you. That's why the bartender can't give you too much or overserve you. And also still so you're not cut off from socialization because there are other people. I'm offering the same type of thing, except it's a little bit more clinical because of the aspect of drugs, right? I think it is time that we, one, put people back to work, and two, gave people who have drug addiction an opportunity to get clean. But you can't get clean if you're being shamed, so you can't come to somebody and talk about it. I think that it would be better for us, better for business, better for our humans if we looked at things the way they are. Drug use isn't going away. We might as well make it safer for people.
And will also be a lot better for decreasing incarceration rates.
Don't even get me started on those because I'm against slavery. And if you support prisons, you are not against slavery.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm also inclined to be fond of Finland's trial of banning homelessness by providing housing outright. And you want to guarantee housing and you want to guarantee healthcare. So, how would you sell that here in Hampton Roads?
So the way I would sell housing is if you're tired of looking at houseless people, the fastest way to get rid of houseless people is to give them housing. The fastest way to deal with sick people is to give them health care, and it's cheaper. We know that putting someone in jail for a temporary amount of time because they're houseless is the biggest scam to get free labor, right? We know Donald Trump is talking about internment camps, and this isn't a knock at Donald Trump where there could be so many. It's a knock at America wanting to imprison and remove the freedoms of other individuals. And that's what pisses me off about this whole country is that we take things that are freedoms that everyone should have and we penalize them when they attempt to exercise those freedoms. I do believe that it is imperative if we as a nation want to go on is to start saving money and stop wasting it. Congressional Budget Office told us years ago it is cheaper to give everyone health care. Last year we spent 4.5 trillion dollars on health care what we currently have in its current state. It is $3 trillion to give everyone the same kind of health care that Mitch the Glitch has. We are choosing to waste money. We are choosing to mismanage how we do things. I can't afford it financially. I won't be a millionaire for much longer if we do not tighten up. I'm being serious. You could say it's a purely selfish thing that I want to preserve my money. And so I think that we should change the way our money works in this country.
Yeah, but I think you might be able to sell it on a lot of people who also have views of wanting to preserve their wealth, that they can do it by cheaper healthcare provided at point of service by the government, and that might flip a lot of switches for people who would be a little conservative minded. I think so. That could be a good way to sell it.
That's true. I guess for me, when I talk to a real conservative, because like I don't mean a bigot, because there's a difference between a bigot and a conservative.
Mhm.
A conservative is always when I talk to a conservative, the idea is to conserve what? What do y'all want to conserve? You, not you personally, but usually, right? It's money.
Mhm.
The Republicans and the Democrats that are in office right now are not conserving anybody's money. We have wasted more money with these two groups of fools than I have ever seen in my 38 years of life. You can't in one breath say we want to cut costs and then be like, let's send $95 billion abroad that we don't have. You can't say we want to be responsible and then say, oh, a company that has insurance that crashed into one of our bridges, we're going to pay for it.
Mhm.
Americans, what is that? If you crash your car into somebody something right now, Joe Biden's not gonna pay that for you. Why is he doing this for a corporation? And this is me talking again about corporate welfare. I want my money from these corporations and I want it immediately.
Now, circling back around again, that I'm in Hampton Roads, and we're basically the military-industrial complex's central hub with as many bases that we have here and businesses funding the MIC. What's your foreign policy and idea for military spending?
So the first thing we should do is actually spend the money on the military. We have so many vets that cannot afford to pay our bills. And I don't know, outside of a love for this country, how veterans or current active duty service individuals did not flip the flip out when Joe Biden told them to apply for food stamps 2 summers ago. There is no reason that you should be serving this country and your kids are on food stamps. I was insulted, and I don't know how servicemen and women were not insulted. They need to be fully funded. The same way generals and chiefs got their money problems adjusted is the same way we actually need to pay the people who are putting their bodies online. We're not even going to get into the fact that service care is terrible. We have more houseless vets than makes sense. We have more veterans that are having to drive 2 or 3 hours to get their medical treatment for the country that they serve that is not willing to serve them in care that they need. So I will be honest, right? I don't have major plans for men and women in service outside of one, bringing all of our troops home. I think that there are a ton of work. There is a ton of work that soldiers in America can do right here in America to be closer to their families, to be safer, and to get America back on the right track. But the first thing we do, instead of funding wars and things that don't take care of the soldier, is to actually fund the soldier. Under a Sherman administration, every enlisted person will be getting major benefits increases financially and about where they have to get their care and how they're treated when they're deployed. We also have an issue that people are not talking about Right now, servicemen and women are being recalled. If you did your 4 years, when they gave you a little break and was like, do you want to get out or do you want to keep going? They're now recalling those people, and that's not okay either.
Yeah, in some ways, many people would like to decry all of that by saying that the military is a big jobs program because it convinces people, hey, you're going to get a little bit of housing or healthcare or such. But if you focus more on actual protection and helping them out like that, I think you might actually coax more people to want to join if you're also telling them that we're fighting less wars. And you protect people who already fought, vets, which they seem incredibly underserved.
They are. My sister, and I don't even like my sister. Let me be clear, she don't like me either. But she did serve this country in Afghanistan. There was no reason that she has to drive to Virginia to see a doctor for her
Exactly.
care that she got serving in Afghanistan. Like, I have a problem with that. I don't feel like people who have sacrificed their lives for us, jobs program or not, should be getting cheated. Because at the end of the day, a lot of people couldn't serve. I didn't serve, Bone Spurs didn't serve, Biden didn't serve. There are a lot of people who actually did serve this country and deserve to be treated like the heroes they are.
Now, in my lean up to preparing for this interview, I was on Facebook debating with I guess a troll who was sharing a Patrick Henry meme. So I've thought of this next question, and it's sort of off the wall, but who is a better American historical figure, Thomas Jefferson or John Brown?
Neither. I would never support a man being a good historical figure. The bitches have it. I'm sorry. I can't say either. I will say if I had to give a historical figure, I would give it to Burr. He was the only presidential candidate we had that wasn't related to everybody else.
Aaron Burr?
hmm
And
He's the only one not related.
he also shot somebody successfully, if I
I
recall.
mean, listen, he was about that life.
He was a good
He
aim.
was,
Yeah.
he was about that life. If you're going to talk smack, make sure you are thin.
It's back at a
Extra
time when
high.
there's better ways to handle it than taking a glove and smacking someone across the face. Yeah.
You know what, though? If I could say, should someone take a glove and hit a few people in office, I think that it would be a very different office. It might
Mhm.
actually work for the people. But I think our politicians aren't afraid of us anymore. They
Uh,
don't know.
there's precedent, I think, with the politicians beating each other with canes. So it's not beyond American history to do that.
I can't wait. Now I'm mad. I would love to like duel Mitch McConnell. Like just walk up to him with a nice leather white glove and slap him in the face.
But
But
here's
he's
the thing,
retiring.
he'll freeze on you. So that gives you an advantage. So
No,
there's
because
that.
now but then it's elder abuse because I'm just beating on a glitching man. I'll have to save my slap for Marjorie Taylor Greene.
There we
I feel
go.
like that. I feel like that could be a fundraiser for real.
Especially now because she's saying that the earthquakes are God sent. So
Well, you knew she wasn't all right when she was telling you about Obama in your microwave. Listen, yeah.
Jewish space lasers and stuff like that. Yeah.
What we have to do is, I think that America is built with a bunch of people that have an opportunity to serve this nation. And I believe we should let anyone that wants to serve. But I
Mhm,
also think that there is such a thing as a time to let people go on home and have a seat.
mhm.
There are quite a few politicians that have done their duty and they should go home.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. Now, I think you did touch a little bit about your view of historical figures as general concept, but I also had fun with this next question too.
Okay.
Let's imagine you're building a dream team to be a lobbying firm in DC, but at your disposal are 5 to 10 of U.S. history's greatest minds. So, who would you pick to be on your team?
Fannie Lou Hamer, Harriet Tubman, Shirley Chisholm. I would also throw in Alex Trebek. And I know that's not going to make sense to you, but I think Alex Trebek would be a great guy for the job. And I would also throw in Mary Lou Retton. She's not
Hmm,
here, but I still think she's a valuable resource.
interesting. I'm a gymnastics fan. Interesting. Interesting. Now, I looked up Ballotpedia as a survey that you took. And here's where the Marvel question comes back in because they asked you who you look up to the most as a fictional character, and you chose Monica Rambeau. So I guess back with that Civil War question too, are you just a deeper comics fan or
No,
the movie fan?
so I've never seen the movies. I've never seen the movies. My my comic, uh, my anime situation comes from anime itself and
Mhm,
manga. But I also was someone that read at the library, and those were the books that were the easiest to get a hold of
mhm.
and not get stolen. So that's how I fell into it. But I've never seen a Marvel movie at all.
Well, some say you're not missing much, but man, I do have a great affinity for setting my brain off and just watching comic book stuff over and over again. Which reminds me, of course, with Captain America: Civil War, where Steve Rogers is from Brooklyn and Spider-Man Peter Parker's from Queens, and they
Well,
ask each
yeah,
other where they're from, so that comes that rivalry of Brooklyn and Queens.
well, Spider-Man is better. I mean, I can at least say Spider-Man is better for very clear reasons. One, he is from Queens and he serves his community. Um, I do not think that Captain America is the end all be all, and that's because he doesn't. Women don't like him. Aunt
Interesting.
May, Aunt May, Spider-Man. Spider-Man had all the ladies. Spider-Man was he never got beside himself. He kept his identity pretty secret. He's very humble. That's a better man. I support Spider-Man all day. And the fact he's got like the upper body strength as a heavier human, you know, I'm a fatty. Spider-Man is more useful to me.
I understand completely. Now I'm sort of tapped out of the cooler policy questions and comic book related questions, Miss Jasmine Sherman. Are there important things that I may have missed out on that you would like to share?
So, yes, I do think that people should know that on my website, you will see that I used to support the death penalty. My position on the death penalty has changed. I do fully still think that Americans should all have firearms to protect themselves. I think that you should have access to take your firearm across state lines. I think that that is something that we should make licenses for so people don't have to stop and not protect themselves wherever they go. But I also do need people to understand that while my death penalty policy has changed, it has changed because there's data to show that our death penalty policies cost us too much money and it doesn't serve the general public. So my goal for people to understand is that I no longer support the death penalty from an economical and ethical standpoint, but I do feel like there actually does need to be consequences, and people don't get those by just being put to death. So I felt like that was something I should share, honestly.
I appreciate that because a lot of people do touch on both their affinity for gun rights because they like the idea of self protection and the fact that the death penalty doesn't serve as a way to deter people anyway. And it seems to have a racial bias to it as well. So, because of all that, it's an unneeded thing. And all it does is create cruel and unusual punishment.
It does,
Um,
and it costs us money. Now, if
mhm.
you break into my home, I will fill you with all the bullets I have in my weapon, respectfully. But that's because you should have knocked and been invited in.
Good point. As we close out here, I want to give you the chance to just mention all the ways that ourselves could follow you, donate if we wish to, subscribe to anything you wish, and just stay up to date with your campaign.
The best way to stay up to date with my campaign would be to check out jasminesherman.com. All of my socials are there. I'm on every social media platform. I think I'm even on Truth Social. So you really just have to Google Jasmine Sherman and I'll come right up. If you are someone that is interested in donating, you would donate via PayPal at jasminesherman.com. But if you are someone that has time, like I have no problem with money because we do need $300,000 to pay for all 50 states ballots, but we need people to donate their labor, similar to how Conrad interviewed us. That's something that you could do. Anyone can provide us me with scrutiny. Anyone can talk about me, and that is the best way because word of mouth. I don't think people understand that traditional politicians aren't talked about because people hate the politics that they have evolved into. But if you actually have candidates that want to earn your vote and want to work for you and serve you, the person paying for the work, I think that those are the candidates that you should be talking about, including myself, including Conrad. Like, we actually just need you to be out there speaking about us, and we'll get very far.
I'd agree with all of that. And of course, I definitely want to thank you, Jasmine Sherman, for joining SchezzWho. I greatly appreciate your campaign, your policies, and jumping on today. Of course, I wish you the great luck at the function that you're at and the rest of this day. And just have a fantastic Saturday.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I will be at Sam's Casino tonight in Mississippi. So if anybody's feeling lucky, come on out.
By chance, when's the next time you might come Virginia way?
So we're actually negotiating. I think there's going to be a debate in like a couple of weeks. So I should be in. I'm hoping to be in Virginia before it gets too hot.
Did it say what city that might
They
be
did
in,
not.
or
They
oh,
did not tell me yet. They never tell me anything yet.
here's hoping it's in Hampton Roads, so I'll be able to attend. So to get
Heck
that.
yeah, we'll let you know either way. Thank you so much for having me.
Excellent. I just hope you have a great day today, and everyone just follow her stuff and embrace yourselves in great new policies and great new politicians. So again, thank you, Ms. Sherman, for joining me today.
Thank you. Peace, love, and air grease.
Well, that's it for SchezzWho today on this day, April 6, 2024. So remember to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Share this video, and I will look to have another SchezzWho as soon as possible and make sure that you guys all have a great day as well.